Welcome to the Coco VidVid Show. My name is Cody and I will be your host. My guest today is the CEO of Bitspace Development since 2015, and he's also on the board of directors at New Media Manitoba since 2017, I believe. He's an expert, or at least I treat him as the foremost expert locally on VR development. His name is Dan Blair. Thank you for joining me today, Dan.
Maybe I'm just pretending to be an expert. Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure you exist. You could be completely virtual.
I'm just an avatar.
You're just an avatar.
Just an avatar.
You're just you exist as a deepfake algorithm somewhere.
It's true. Yeah, someone is wearing a suit somewhere and just controlling what I'm doing, and I am just a poorly rendered human that exists in this digital world.
You laugh about that, but I feel like that's the future of. Maybe we'll get into that and this guy.
Maybe we'll see where this takes us.
Yeah, let's see where it takes us. But let's start off with your company, with Bitspace Development. I'd like to know how you guys got started, where you're based out of, what kind of projects and clients do you work with.
Yeah. So Bitspace is my baby. I founded it in 2015 and I've been running it ever since. It's an interesting story because I accidentally started it way back in the day, and I'm still here because I don't actually know how to stop doing it, and I really like doing it. But Bitspace is a company that's focused almost entirely on innovation and R&D in the immersive technology space. So we develop simulators, we develop custom peripherals, we develop applications and solutions using technology that falls around the peripherals and directly in the sector of immersive technology. So we do a lot of work with Internet of Things sensors. We do a lot of work with AR and VR headsets. There's a little stack beside me here. We do everything from digital twins to reconstructed virtual training scenarios. We work in a lot of different sectors in Canada, the US, and all over the world, really. And our entire team is located here in Winnipeg. Even though we're completely remote today, we happen to be located here in Winnipeg. We've got some satellite people involved right now in other countries, but for now, we are headquartered and operated directly out of the center of our country, right here in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
What is your workforce look like right now in terms of remote versus, do you have anybody in your office? Is there anybody actually working out of the office right now?
The only soul in my office right now is me. 100% of our company is remote right now, and we have been since March. We do have a physical location that is open to our staff if they need. However, we deployed all the computers, the headsets, equipment that was needed to be able to do the job remotely. And it's only some very specialized stuff that we need to come down for. The office is nice sometimes because you can kind of quietly work. I often am working out of my home office. And there's a few people that may come down once in a while, but for the most part, especially during the latest code red restriction, we've been 100% remote.
Cool. So you guys have been in business since 2015. At least that's what I have in my notes.
Yeah, it feels like a long time. That's ancient history at this point.
Yeah, the last time I met you in person was probably 2014. So since then, everything has changed for you. And I wonder how much has changed in VR or in VR, AR, and all that in the industry that you work in. How much has the technology changed? Has there been?
You could ask the same question of how much has it changed since last year. This is one of the fastest growing and changing ecosystems that exist right now. When I started Bitspace, we were really focused on three degrees of freedom. We were really focused on 360 photos and videos. And I was building a product at the time called Panoplay, which kind of spiritually still exists in some of our products now. But we were entirely focused on the type of VR where you just slide your phone into a cardboard viewer and the Oculus DK2. Since then, so much technology has come out. Over the last 5 years, we've seen headsets go from expensive developer kit technology or super inexpensive cardboard boxes that you put your phone in, all the way to high-end gaming and prosumer headsets that are powered by very high-end computers and standalone headsets. So ones like this here, where you put on the headset, you can walk around. You don't need a phone or a computer. Often when I'm doing this as a presentation at conferences, I like to show a little graph of how all these things have grown over the last few years, but it is vastly different of a landscape today than it was when I started the company. Back in 2015, if I knocked on your door and said, would you like to build a VR simulator? The answer was almost certainly no. And not only like are people more interested this year, we happen to be in the depths of a global pandemic, which has made this technology more relevant than ever. And it is a completely different ecosystem than what it was back in the day. So this technology has gone from using your phone to using full body tracking to hand tracking, eye tracking, face tracking, super, super high end compared to what we had at the time. And it continues to grow. Some of the latest headsets have super high resolutions and wide field of views that we only dreamed of back when I was starting this company.
That's crazy. Yeah, well, you touched about it a little bit there. It's just like the global pandemic that's happening right now. COVID, locking us down, working from home remotely. Everybody's trying to socialize over technology with Zoom or Skype or whatever. Yeah, how has this year changed or strengthened or enforced what you've thought about VR and those types of technologies? And has any new insights come out of it?
Yeah, so this is probably going to be a long answer. COVID has affected both myself and my company in a lot of different ways. And it'll be interesting to go back to podcasts and recordings that I was on way back in March, talking about how how we're so ready for this and all the digital technologies we were already using to meet every day. But in reality, we just had no idea, and we still have no idea where this is going. We had our work Christmas party last night, and our work, and I swear this is relevant, but our work Christmas party was in VR. Very appropriately, we're a company that leverages the technology, and we use a tool called Mozilla Hubs. And I said to my team last year at the holiday party, I talked a lot about how, as a startup, we really grew and we were really solidified as a company, and we had at this point experienced everything there was to experience, and from here on out we were just going to get more and more solid in the way that we do work. So last night I had said to my team, I don't know what I was talking about, I wasn't prepared. What this pandemic did, and it's been absolutely awful, the amount of death and the amount of changes that has come to people's lives. But one thing that has really affected my business was the entire mentality shift in two different ways. One, people are not interested in sharing VR headsets anymore. We used to do conferences and, we put on a headset, we take it off, wipe it down, next person would go in. I see it being a very long time before we get back to that being a comfortable thing, if ever. Another thing, though, that this pandemic has done is, aside from forcing my team to be completely remote and having us walk the walk and talk the talk, not just talk about how great VR is, but use VR every single day to meet and see each other for our morning stand-ups and for meeting in a virtual space that is a branded room that still has people feel like we're together, has people, we can draw on a whiteboard together in VR. But it opened up a lot of people's eyes to the use of the technology for applications at their businesses. So, a lot of dead leads came back. A lot of people that we had to talk to in a couple of years that were originally interested suddenly resurfaced. And we're in a vastly different position today as we were earlier in this year. At the beginning of the year, we experienced some layoffs due to projects being canceled or postponed. I've been hiring since September now, as projects have been picking up with the whole shift and moving back into some places, certainly not here, back into office and becoming more comfortable with the idea of working remotely. Companies have got to the point where they're more interested in an innovation budget, an innovation program, and they're exploring this technology. Some are using it in ways like we do every day to meet and collaborate. Some are simulating and making training easy. There's so many different ways that people are using it in exciting different ways that I didn't think would be relevant today.
Do you have any
So,
examples of
the
that? Like
pandemic.
what has surprised you about like the way that people are using it now that you didn't foresee before?
Well, I'm seeing a lot more adoption on the social side than I initially anticipated this year. Using it for things like holiday parties and events and conferences. I've been to so many conferences I wouldn't have been to otherwise this
Mm,
year, and spoken at conferences I wouldn't have spoken at otherwise because of the fact that I can do it all from my home office.
yep.
Slide on a VR headset. Now I'm speaking at the Students in VR conference or Educators in VR, or I'm attending some smaller conference that I normally wouldn't have traveled to go to. Now I can attend because it's digital.
Are there any
And I mean,
conferences? Sorry,
oh
are there
yeah,
any places doing attempting like VR conferences that
oh yeah,
aren't
it's happening.
already, or are there any companies trying to do it that aren't already kind of inherently in that tech space, in that business space? Like, do you see it happening in like
There's a lot
fashion?
of conferences and a lot of companies right now that are moving into that mentality that didn't traditionally. And I find that to be both encouraging for the future of the technology and a bit of a daunting task, because one of the biggest challenges that we face as an organization is overcoming technical barriers in companies that have a legacy way of doing things.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there is a large number of companies and conferences that are looking to move in this direction that didn't traditionally, and which is great for the overall industry. I think that the pandemic, what it has done for in the VR industry is really pushed it ahead quite a lot faster than any other year previously, and that comes both because of technology, but also opportunity because of real world scenarios that are happening.
Hmm.
So the whole idea of like how has COVID really affected Bitspace and myself. Um, the the whole idea of adapting to this, I think about myself as a father and as a person, not just a business owner, trying to run my business from home while also having my kids doing school from home and sitting in the same room as me and trying to attend these conferences. I have created such a streamlined workflow for myself now that incorporates my kids into this
Hmm.
because I've had to. Like they're doing school, and I happen to be doing a meeting, so they're doing a Zoom meeting. We're scheduling meetings around school and stuff, and allowing and encouraging my specifically my oldest daughter to use VR to connect with her friends and to socialize with, because she can't otherwise,
Hmm.
because how do you go see friends?
Right.
So it's been interesting to adapt both as a business owner and as a father during this pandemic, because it's really made me rethink how I was even using the technology that I was selling every day, at a fundamental level.
For sure. And how old are your kids? You said.
So I have three daughters. I
Okay.
have a 12-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old.
Wow. Wow. Well, I can't
And she
imagine
came
that.
along during the pandemic.
Yeah, that sounds like a harrowing story about just
Yeah,
what that even
that
is
was
like.
definitely interesting. Going and delivering a baby in you know what, we missed out on Code Red. So we were lucky when the baby came.
Right.
When we were planning on having our third child, it wasn't a pandemic yet, so we didn't know any better.
It
And
wasn't
luckily
poor
here in our
planning.
province, when it was time for the baby to come, we didn't really have any cases yet.
Yeah.
And so, although there was outbreaks in our hospitals locally, we were lucky in the sense that we were able to have the baby, bring her home, and then get settled in, and then things started to get worse here.
Yeah.
But the adjustment to having a newborn while trying to run a startup at home has been just and I thought I had a hard time with a newborn when I was able to come to the office every day.
Right.
And I am lucky that my wife also runs Bitspace with me. So like, we work together. So we're raising kids together, building a company together, and I'm lucky to have her support, because I wouldn't be able to do it without it. But it's been an adjustment. So on a personal level, like just adapting to this pandemic and trying to, one, build a company that's fun to work at and doing
Hmm.
meaningful work while also being there for my kids, it's a balancing act. And this pandemic has really made me take a perspective of, what do I really want to be focusing on? And I think that has actually really helped me grow as a CEO and as a founder, because I've had to make difficult decisions and I've had to adapt to things that I didn't think I'd have to adapt to, both at home and at work. And I think that overall, it has set me up in a way that I think I'm going into the next year in a way better place mentally than I was going into 2020.
That's
I
great
thought
to
that we
hear.
were going to spend this whole year groaning at all the optometrist ads talking about getting 2020 vision, and they didn't even get a chance before all of this. I only heard one joke.
That's true. That's next year, right? Like hindsight is 2020. That's what it's gonna all be about that. Oh God, I know. Like it was like the one year I thought where where a New Year's Eve, and it's not gonna happen, I guess, or it's gonna happen to some degree, where a New Year's Eve people could go out with the 2020 sunglasses, like the glasses for like New Year's, and I'd be like, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the one year where it makes sense. Every other year, it's like, well, you made a.
We have to wait 10 years now.
Yeah,
for 2030 to have two circles or two zeros again.
Right. It's like you put a hole in a one, and then you put your eye in it, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
that's funny. So I'm actually very interested in talking about that and how much has VR or just technology been where it's been, what its strengths have been, what its shortcomings have been for social connections for your children. Like, are they do you feel like they're connecting with their friends the same? Do you feel like I imagine it's probably harder to make new friends? What is that like? And where do you see technology helping, or do you see technology helping in bridging the gap there?
I think that technology is helping everyone stay connected to their friends, whether they have VR or not. Like, we're chatting right now. So I've heard of a lot of people doing Zoom meetings with their friends and, game nights and stuff. VR takes that slightly further in the sense that, well, one, your avatar can represent you, who you are. So you get to be yourself regardless of how you physically look. And that could be a whole topic on its own. But I believe that it allows for a high level of connection with people, mainly because I do it every day, not just for work, but every weekend I put on my headset for a little bit and I go to concerts and I go and I meet up with VR friends that I from the industry, or I just go hang out at the comedy clubs and stuff. And it's as if I can go out and socialize in real life, but I'm doing it in a VR headset. And maybe some whiskey's involved sometimes, and sometimes it gets out of hand, and Scotch Dan emerges ready to do some online shopping. But but I think that that technology, there are elements where it is it could be considered a shortcoming of the technology. Like, one, it's pretty expensive still. Right now we have like the Oculus Quest 2 that gives us a pretty cheap headset to get started with, but the price point's still $300-400 a headset, and that's not money to throw away. And so, like, there are compromises and there's still cheaper options to try and get started with the technology, but it's not a cheap hobby to get into. It maybe has been a little easier to grow with it.
Right.
So I've got quite an extensive collection these days. But I definitely didn't just go out and do it all at once. Like, this is half a decade of collecting headsets and supporting headsets for projects for our clients.
For sure. Like,
so I like the technology for my my older kids. Obviously my infant is not going in VR. My 3-year-old, she has looked in the headset a few times. There's a really sweet moment where she was riding a roller coaster and just having a great time, but she doesn't spend much time in it. But my oldest daughter, I do think it is beneficial, because you can go and you can meet friends, because as a parent it's more challenging, but I'm still able to monitor what's happening. I know what kind of apps she's using. I know where she's socializing, because I use all the same apps. I can hear what she's doing, and I have my own headset. I want to check in on her. I'll pop my headset on and go check. So I know that she's not up to no good, but you can make new friends, and I don't think that it's much different than allowing my daughter to, for example, play Roblox with her friends or to play Minecraft with her friends. It's more about having that connection in this time where we can't really have it otherwise. And that's part of the mentality why at Bitspace we do our morning stand-up in Mozilla Hubs every day. So we're able to have our avatars and we can walk around together and we can have meetings and breakaway and have groups of us like move from here to here together. And when we were doing our holiday party, really, we pushed the platform to its potential where we had multiple rooms you could move between. We had movies going on in one room. So we were playing the old 70s Star Wars holiday special in a movie theater off in one room. And we had Jackbox going in
That's the movie you
the
chose?
room. And we had the snowman decorating. And we had a Scotch club off to the side. And all those things connected and allowed us to kind of move freely as if it was a real holiday party for like, for work, where you could go from thing to thing and break away and have a discussion. And we had little competitions, and it allowed us to do more than just all get on Zoom together and then listen to me talk for an hour. We just kind of like, I did a very brief discussion, and then from there on out, it was games and hanging out and chatting, and it felt good. It didn't feel like, one of those lame mandatory fun Zoom meetings that everyone gets stuck on.
Mandatory fun, yeah.
I think that it allows for a level of human connection that you can't get otherwise. And that really comes down because of the medium. VR is the only medium that, and I actually say this in my TEDx talk I did way back in 2016, but VR is the only medium that allows me to give you a sense of presence and let you look through the eyes of a story character, right? And that, whether that story character is like a character in a game or you're a social avatar in a setting where now you can all interact, you are there and you get to look through those eyes, and that's what you are experiencing. And so, you get the empathy of being there with someone. You get to reach out and, depending on the headsets that you're using, you might have your controllers, you could reach out and touch each other's hands and stuff. And like, that's something that you can do only in a virtual environment that you aren't going to get otherwise.
For sure. Yeah. You touched on a few things there, and one being just the barrier still being price. Among my group of friends, I would love if more people had VR headsets. Like we could get into things, but trying to tell somebody or try to convince somebody to plop down $450 for the Oculus Quest 2 is a tough sell right now, unfortunately. Which good reason, but
especially during a pandemic where people are out of work and money needs to be conserved. I will say I don't have a lot of friends that have VR headsets either.
Oh yeah, so are a lot of the friends that you're hanging out with in VR at these concerts or at these events friends you've made because you've gone to those events? And
when I say that, I mean more of like my local friend group as opposed to my industry friend group. Of course, industry friends, other studio founders and other developers that I've been hanging out with over the last six-ish years, they have headsets. So yeah, we can meet up, no problem. And everyone that works for me has a headset deployed to them in some capacity. So, I do know a significant amount of people with headsets, but when I think of like, my friend group that I would normally be getting together with outside of work, they don't have headsets. So, we're not all jumping in and going to do a thing together. Although, I have recommendations for them if they ever look.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get some kind of bulk bundle deal and get a bunch of headsets for them or something, maybe they'd be on board. Because like it's interesting to hear somebody from with that much experience doing working with that technology. Just how are you finding just you with your friend group, with your non-professional friend group? How are you finding ways to socialize? Like, it's just Zoom? Is it just Zoom call after Zoom call, and then maybe somebody?
It gets challenging. I mean, so there's multiple challenges, and so maybe this is a fairly personal answer, but one of my strengths is not maintaining friendships. I'm a studio founder. I'm a startup founder. I work. I also have 3 kids, and a wife, and so like, and obviously my wife's my best friend. But like, if I try to think of like, people that I used to hang out with all the time, one of my strengths is definitely not maintaining those types of friendships. And so it takes a lot of effort, and it's been challenging, especially during the pandemic. And I think a lot of people are in a similar situation like that, where you feel kind of isolated, even though technically everyone can get in on a Zoom meeting. But when I do meet with people, it is, either, especially if they don't have a VR headset, it's often through Discord, whether we'll meet up and play a game or just chat. But Discord's nice because it's free. It's got video chat, it's got audio chat. It's a pretty good tool. We have a Discord channel set up for Bitspace, although we use Slack internally for work. We have a Discord channel for playing games, and I'll often use that to meet up with friends. But like from a personal level, like separating myself from like myself as a founder and more of like myself as a person. I mean, the older I get, the more obvious it is that it is challenging to maintain friendships and relationships outside of professional circles. The nice thing, though, is that I think that with the pandemic, it has made people more open to digital meetings. So it has been easier. But I mean, I often think about people that maybe don't have close circles, like friend circles that they can call on for support when they need it. And so I'm lucky that I do have people that I can call on. But that's probably one of the biggest things that has happened to people during this pandemic is they've been cut off from their support circles. And like VR doesn't necessarily help at all, because again, it's a barrier to entry to get into. But we're just talking about digitally collaborating and digitally getting together. Like this is probably one of the most accessible ways to do it.
Right. Like, well, I mean, one barrier even is just like broadband isn't necessarily available everywhere. Like that's just the lowest
one of the biggest problems. Like we battle that all the time at Bitspace. Like we think of like when we're deploying a VR simulation into a rural or northern community, and they want to access the hardware, often we will go for an offline solution running on specialized hardware like a Pico headset, because we can deploy the software onto the hardware and deploy it to the community, and we don't have to worry about streaming content or accessing anything remotely, because they just don't have a reliable connection. But the flip side of that is we don't get the multiplayer aspect of it. You can't play together. And VR without the social piece is inherently isolating.
Yeah, you're literally putting something on your face away and isolating you from the real world, unless there's somebody else connecting into that virtual world with you. You're alone. It was super interesting to hear about your Christmas party and how you had that going, because I can imagine a lot of other workplaces, a lot of other companies thinking like, that sounds cool. I wish we could have done that. We did a Zoom party where everybody sat in front of a camera and didn't really know what to do, and maybe we did trivia or something. Do you see you doing more things like that in the future? Like once things return back to normal, do you see yourself doing that again? Like do you, when you don't actually need to have to do that anymore, is there any advantage to doing it that way?
So there's a pretty strong chance that we probably just won't go back to how it was. Meaning that like with my team, we'll probably for the most part stay largely remote.
Okay.
Meaning that we'll continue to utilize these tools. That being said, there is something to be said about the physical in-person connections. But one of the byproducts of this pandemic has also been that we are now much more open to remote work. And the more we bring on remote staff from other cities, provinces, countries, the more it will still be essential to do a digital party, because we want to be inclusive and pull everyone together. So, say we bring on some developers from Montreal, and then, we've got someone working with us from San Francisco and et cetera. Like, they're not probably going to fly up for a physical party. It would make much more sense to collaborate digitally because it's the industry we work in. I think that there's a lot of merit to it because it isn't an expensive thing to do from a business perspective. Like the instances that we run for Mozilla Hubs internally are not that expensive. Like I'm talking like $100-ish a month. Like it's like easily overcome by a business. And I mean, the time to set it up can be extravagant depending on what you're trying to build. But like, I think that it's one of the most equal and equitable things you can do for events, because now everyone gets a seat at the table. It's not just for people who can fly there or people who can physically travel there. Everyone gets to be a part of it. So I think it'll become more and more normal to host digital meetings and events this way, because there's no barrier to joining if you're working in that industry. especially with a tool like Mozilla Hubs, because you can use a PC. You don't have to have a VR headset. So if you have a VR headset, first you get the VR functionality. But if you just have a PC or a phone or a tablet, you can just look around. So it is nice as a tool for people who want to be able to access events and be able to attend it digitally. But it's not quite as full featured or as VR feature rich as a VR only tool like Altspace or Engage. But it is a really nice tool for businesses to be able to do an event like this.
Yeah, I mean, what could you say to a business that is maybe brand new into that space and they wanted to run an event like that? Where would they even start? Would they work with a company like yourself or some other company to try to help organize that event and set up the infrastructure? How do you even begin planning an event like that if you have
Well, the
no
best
experience
place
with
to
it?
start is always going to be to talk to someone who has some knowledge in the space. And it doesn't have to be me; it could be anybody that's working in VR that has some experience running events in a VR setting. But one of the best places to start is to basically take stock of what your team has access to. So, do you have VR headsets? Does your team, or are they all just using PCs? That might largely affect what platform you use. After that, start thinking about what you can use to take advantage of the VR space to its full capacity, right? Like, don't just have one room that everyone's kind of crammed into and you're trying to do 15 things in there. Have a few different rooms connected together. So, like I mentioned for our party, we had a movie theater where we could watch Star Wars. We had our main area where we could watch or we could play Jackbox. And then we had another room where we could quietly meet and enjoy our whiskeys. So planning out the space ahead of time is no different than planning a physical event. How many rooms do you need? Do you have to have breakout spaces? If you're doing a conference, do you need to have, like, is it a conference hall? Do you have literally rooms that you connect to at certain times for different talks? How are you streaming that content? Or, where are you streaming it from? I basically had a control panel or control room set up for myself during the holiday party because I had one computer streaming Jackbox, I had another one streaming our movie, I had another one streaming XY, all the kinds of things.
Right.
And then my own character on my main computer. So it can be a little bit of overhead on the days of the event, but once you're using it, like we use it every day for our stand-ups, and for that we're not presenting. We're just popping in, chatting. It becomes quite an accessible tool in that capacity. So starting with it, one of the best ways, like I said, is seek out anybody, whether that's local or one of your partners that you're already working with that has experience working in VR with events. And then beyond that, attend some. So whether you have access to a VR headset or if you're just going on your computer, there's a non-VR client for Altspace, for example. Make an avatar and attend some events and see what people are doing to give you an idea of what's possible with the headset. There are some really extravagant ones like Microsoft Dev Days in Altspace, and then there's some really small ones where it's just a fireside chat with like the Virtual World Society, for example. There's all kinds of things happening every day. I haven't looked at the calendar today, but I'm almost certain that if I go look at the calendar now, there's going to be some stuff happening.
Is there like a
either already
central
happened today or is happening later.
is there like a central hub somewhere where you can look up these events?
There's all kinds of places. One of my favorite people to follow on Twitter is Andy with Get Social. They keep a pretty current list of all kinds of events that are happening. Hashtag Get Social, and the whole list of VR events that are happening in Altspace hubs and related platforms.
That's really cool. I think something that I might want to look into. Although I only have a PSVR right now, so that limits me in what I can actually probably.
It does limit a little bit. PSVR is a little bit less social than other headsets, but
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to branch out in the near future. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? We'll see what Santa has in store for me. I guess. I usually like to end these talks about what kind of positive note and positive change we've seen in this year. But I feel like you've talked a lot about different positives in the VR space. But is there anything that stands out to you from this pandemic? Will come out better on the other end, having been through it.
I mean, I think like the most positive thing that I experienced during this pandemic was my own personal growth. And I think like coming out the other end of it as a, where I'm at as a CEO today versus where I was at this time last year, completely different. And I don't mean that like I've got a treasure chest behind me or something. What I mean is that like I've grown.
What's that?
As a person. Oh yeah, hide it. But I've grown as a person, which means that like, having to make difficult decisions and having to adapt to real world scenarios and difficult scenarios in the world has given me skills that you can only really get by going through the toughest stuff.
Yeah.
And so for me, the most positive thing that has happened during all this, I mean, aside from my family's been healthy the whole time, my team has been healthy the whole time, we've had work for my team, we've been able to grow in certain ways, both in people and in, the types of projects we're working on and those kind of things. But, we've been able to, as a team, grow. I've watched a lot of growth in my team leaders. I've watched a lot of growth in my staff. Some of the new staff have really brought a lot to the table when it comes to culture and, and diversity on our team, which has been fantastic this year. We've hired a lot of people from all walks of life, which has been really, really amazing from like a startup perspective. But, personally, going back to, being a dad going into this, adapting my family to this, adapting my business to this, there is just so much that I could have only learned by having to deal with this. And I 100% realize and am grateful that not everyone has had a very good experience with this. And like, there's been elements of this that have been awful for me as well. And I realize that like there's a lot of luck and privilege that comes from the industry that I work in, the what we've achieved during this. And I truly believe that's because of the team that worked with me right now. I can point them in a direction and I can support them and try and help them grow. But at the end of the day, we've got a lot of really great people working here that have really helped to solidify our direction. And I think that is largely because of my ability to grow as a CEO and help find people and really look for certain character traits in people that have really been able to prove this to me. So, just to summarize, the number one thing that I have seen as a positive change this year has been, an opportunity and a necessity for self-growth and discovery as a CEO and a startup founder.
I think it's a good year for that personal growth for a lot of people, just in so many ways, right? Like it's not just because you're probably spending a lot of time isolated from other people and at home, spending a lot of time, and maybe some people have been laid off or whatever.
My work hours got a lot longer randomly. Sure why.
You had a kid. That's what.
Yes, exactly. I work harder now and longer because I have more kids.
Yeah, so it's always really cool to hear like the personal growth that's coming out of this year as well, and that seems to be a theme with a lot of the people I talk to, and I love hearing that. So, thank you so much for coming by, Dan. This was a pleasure. I think I learned so much. I'm super excited. I need to pick up a headset and go to some of these concerts, I think.
Yeah, I'll send you some recommendations, my friend.
Send me some recommendations. Send me a headset if you got one. No,
I'll see what I got.
Doesn't matter if it doesn't work anymore. I'll try to make it work. But yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you coming by, Dan. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
It has.
Thank you.